I'm Eliza Bennett, 32 years old, standing in the grand halls of my grandmother's historic mansion, preparing for our annual family conference. I feel like an outsider, an alien among my relatives who are adorned in designer labels, flashing luxury watches, and exuding an air of effortless wealth. My simple navy blazer, modest pearl earrings, and understated jewelry draw their condescending whispers and sideways glances. Despite sharing the same bloodline, I've endured a decade of their mockery, their snide remarks about my supposed financial struggles. Little do they know, I've been quietly building an empire in the shadows, and today, what's inside my briefcase will change everything. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to connect with you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you're intrigued, hit that subscribe button and stick around to witness how I finally showed my status-obsessed family what real wealth truly means. My family, the Bennetts, have been pillars of Boston's real estate scene since the 1920s, when my great-grandfather transformed a modest inheritance into a thriving empire during the post-war boom. By the 1970s, when my grandmother, Elizabeth, took the reins, the Bennett name was synonymous with luxury properties across New England. Unlike her brothers, who chased flash and prestige, Grandma Elizabeth was a shrewd, principled businesswoman. She believed wealth should be quiet, purposeful, a tool for creating security and opportunity, not a trophy to display. My father, her youngest son, inherited her pragmatic mindset. He fell in love with my mother, a humble kindergarten teacher with no family fortune, sparking a scandal among the status-conscious Bennetts. They chose a modest life in a quiet suburb, much to the family's dismay. Dad worked as an architect, designing homes meant for real families to cherish, not soulless status symbols. Mom continued teaching, instilling in me the belief that money was a means, not an identity. When I was just 15, a tragic car accident claimed their lives as they returned from a weekend getaway. My world shattered overnight. Grandma Elizabeth took me in, shielding me from the whispers of my aunts and uncles who labeled me the family's charity case. In those raw, painful months, I'd find her late at night in her study, poring over old photo albums or analyzing property portfolios. "Eliza," she'd say softly, her voice steady with wisdom, "most of the family has forgotten what wealth is truly for. They think it's about flaunting their status, but real wealth is invisible. It's about security, opportunity, and the power to make a meaningful difference." During the 3 years I lived with her before college, she became my mentor, teaching me more about finance, investment, and property valuation than any textbook ever could. She showed me how to read market trends, spot undervalued properties with hidden potential, and, above all, how to be patient, letting wealth grow quietly over time. My cousins Brad, Victoria, Taylor, Jessica, and Blake grew up in a starkly different world. Uncle Richard, who assumed the role of family patriarch after Grandpa's passing, championed conspicuous consumption. His children and those of my other aunts and uncles were gifted sports cars on their 16th birthdays, jetted off on lavish vacations every school break, and wore only the finest designer clothes. Meanwhile, I drove the used Toyota my parents left me, worked part-time jobs to cover my expenses, and invested every spare penny, following Grandma's guidance. When Grandma Elizabeth passed away during my senior year of college, she left each grandchild a modest inheritance. My cousins squandered theirs on luxury condos, exotic trips, or, in Blake's case, a small yacht he barely uses to this day. I, however, followed Grandma's advice. I lived frugally in a modest apartment, continued working, and strategically invested my inheritance in small, overlooked properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods, laying the foundation for my secret empire. The annual family conference, originally Grandma Elizabeth's vision to foster unity and shared purpose, morphed under Uncle Richard's leadership into a stage for status competition. Each year, relatives showcased their most impressive portfolio updates, flaunted their latest extravagant purchases, and boasted about their career triumphs. I would arrive in my modest attire, share deliberately understated updates about my life, and endure their thinly veiled pity, their smug assumptions that I was struggling to keep up. What they didn't know was that, by my 28th birthday, my portfolio had grown to include 12 residential properties and 3 small commercial buildings, all acquired anonymously through LLCs, with the guidance of Grandma's trusted attorney, Mr. Grayson Winters. Last year, I uncovered a golden opportunity. I learned that the sprawling luxury apartment complex where Uncle Richard, my cousin Blake, Victoria, and 2 other family members resided had gone on the market. The owner, looking to retire, sought a quiet sale to avoid unsettling tenants. Using a complex holding company framework Mr. Winters helped me establish, I purchased the building for $28 million, nearly exhausting my liquid capital. I implemented subtle improvements, security upgrades, modernized common areas, and slight rent adjustments, all while keeping my ownership completely anonymous. I ensured the changes were fair, keeping rents well below market rates to maintain tenant satisfaction, though my family, predictably, grumbled about the inconvenience. Now, as I prepare for this year's conference, I've received unsettling news. Uncle Richard plans to propose selling Grandma's mansion, the heart of our family legacy, the last tangible connection to her wisdom and values. I'm standing in that very mansion now, watching my relatives parade their wealth, completely unaware that the so-called poor relation they've mocked for a decade owns the roof over their heads in their luxury apartments. Today, everything changes. On Friday afternoon, I pulled up to the mansion in my reliable 10-year-old Toyota, the same car I'd driven since college. The circular driveway was already crowded with gleaming luxury cars, Brad's new Maserati parked ostentatiously near the front steps, and Catherine's sleek Mercedes SUV, Uncle Richard's imposing Bentley, and a parade of other high-end vehicles that likely cost more than most people's homes. I nestled my Toyota between Blake's Range Rover and Victoria's BMW, my modest car looking as if it had wandered into the wrong neighborhood by mistake. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed my simple navy blazer, purchased on sale from Banana Republic, and checked my minimal makeup in the rearview mirror. The mansion stood as majestic as ever, its 3 stories of elegant Georgian brick framed by white columns, with impeccably manicured gardens sprawling across 4 acres. As I ascended the limestone steps, a familiar blend of warmth and apprehension washed over me. This place had been my sanctuary after losing my parents, a haven of memories, but now it symbolized the growing chasm between my values and those of my relatives. I'd arrived early on purpose, hoping to soak in the quiet nostalgia before the family circus descended. Martha, the housekeeper who had served our family for over 3 decades, opened the heavy oak door before I could even ring the bell. "Miss Eliza," she exclaimed, her warm smile lighting up her face as she pulled me into a hug that smelled of lemon polish and cinnamon. "It's so wonderful to see you. You look more like your grandmother every year." Her kind words brought the first genuine smile to my lips that day. "Thank you, Martha. You're still the best welcome committee this mansion has ever had." She leaned in, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "You might want to know, Mr. Richard has been here since dawn, rearranging the conference schedule and meeting with the family attorney." Her words confirmed my suspicions about the mansion sale, though they weren't surprising. Martha helped me carry my weekend bag to my old bedroom, the one I'd called home during those formative years with Grandma. Unlike the other guest rooms, which had been redecorated multiple times to reflect the latest trends, this one remained untouched. Pale blue walls, simple white furniture, and a cozy window seat overlooking Grandma's beloved rose garden. I ran my fingers over the bookshelf, still lined with my old favorites, finance textbooks nestled beside classic novels, the worn notebook where Grandma taught me to track stock movements, and a small framed photo of my parents and me at Cape Cod, taken the summer before they died. As I unpacked, a soft knock interrupted my thoughts. My cousin Jessica stood in the doorway, her warm smile a rare beacon of kindness in our family. "Thought I heard you arrive," she said, leaning against the frame. Unlike our other cousins, Jessica had forged her own path as a pediatrician, though she still maintained the expected level of family luxury, designer jeans, and a cashmere sweater that likely cost more than my entire outfit. But her eyes held no judgment, only genuine warmth. "I wanted to warn you before everyone shows up," she continued, stepping inside. "Uncle Richard has big plans this weekend. He's going to propose selling the mansion." Though I'd suspected as much, hearing it confirmed made my stomach sink. "But this place is our heritage," I protested. "Grandma would never have wanted that." Jessica sighed, sitting beside me on the bed. "I know, but he's talking about unlocking the property's value and modernizing family assets. He's already got most of the votes lined up." The Bennett family governance structure, another of Uncle Richard's innovations after Grandma's passing, weighted decisions by each member's contribution to the family's overall holdings. Richard, as the most commercially successful, held the lion's share of influence. My small, publicly declared holdings gave me minimal voting power. "Is that why we're meeting for 3 days instead of the usual 2?" I asked. Jessica nodded. "Property discussions on Saturday, financial reviews on Sunday, and the big vote on Monday. He's even bringing in developers to pitch luxury condo concepts where the mansion stands." My heart sank further. This wasn't just a building. It was the last physical link to Grandma's wisdom, her values, her belief in wealth as a force for good. The thought of it being raised for yet another soulless luxury development felt like a betrayal. "I'm going to fight this," I said quietly, my resolve hardening. Jessica squeezed my hand. "I know, and I'll back you. But be prepared for resistance." She glanced at her watch. "Everyone's gathering for dinner in 20 minutes. Victoria's already asked twice if the poor cousin has arrived yet." I forced a smile. Wouldn't want to disappoint her. After Jessica left, I took a moment to steady myself. I'd come to this conference with a plan, but now the stakes felt higher than ever. Dinner that evening unfolded as expected, crystal glasses sparkling under chandeliers, fine china gleaming on the long mahogany table, and conversation carefully curated to highlight everyone's latest triumphs. Uncle Richard held court at the head, where Grandma once sat, boasting about his latest development project. "Completely sold out before construction even began," he declared, swirling his 30-year-old scotch. We had to turn away buyers. And Catherine chimed in about her charity gala, which had raised $100,000 more than last year's, while pointedly noting she hadn't seen my name on any donor lists lately. Brad, now an executive at Uncle Richard's company through blatant nepotism, steered the conversation to his new Maserati. The waiting list was 9 months, but they expedited for our family name. He smirked, glancing at me. "What are you driving these days, Eliza?" "Still that Toyota." I took a calm sip of water. Still serving me perfectly well. Uncle Richard's wife, Patricia, made a sympathetic sking sound. "You know, dear, if you'd let Richard mentor you in property investments, you could afford to upgrade your lifestyle a bit." I bit back the urge to reveal that my investments were thriving without Richard's guidance. Instead, I smiled politely. "I'm comfortable with my choices." The subtle digs continued through the meal, references to exclusive clubs I didn't belong to, comparisons of vacation homes I didn't own, discussions of private school options for their children that I supposedly couldn't afford. Despite it all, I held onto a flicker of hope that, once they saw the full picture, there might be a chance for genuine connection. After dinner, I slipped away to walk the mansion grounds alone, drawn to Grandma's rose garden, now softly lit by elegant landscape lights. Standing among her meticulously cultivated flowers, I renewed my resolve to preserve her legacy, both this physical place and the values she'd instilled in me. Whatever unfolded this weekend, I would honor her memory, even if it meant finally unveiling the empire I'd built in secret. Saturday morning greeted me with golden autumn sunlight streaming through my bedroom curtains. I dressed carefully in black slacks and a simple blue blouse, professional, understated, true to my values. The main family conference was set to begin at 9 a.m. in the grand drawing room, where generations of Bennetts had shaped our family's fortune. As I entered, the atmosphere shifted palpably. The usual family portraits had been removed from the walls, replaced with sleek architectural renderings of modern condominiums. Uncle Richard stood at the front beside a digital projector, while my cousins and their spouses filled the antique chairs arranged in a semicircle. Several unfamiliar faces sat in the back, likely the developers Jessica had mentioned. "Ah, Eliza, good of you to join us," Uncle Richard announced as I slipped into a seat beside Jessica. We were just about to begin our discussion on family image and standards. I nodded politely, noticing the exchanged glances among my cousins as I sat down. Richard launched into his presentation, clicking through slides showcasing the Bennett family logo emblazoned on increasingly opulent buildings. "Image is currency in our world," he proclaimed, pacing in Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "The Bennett name opens doors, but only if we uphold certain standards in how we present ourselves." His gaze lingered on me briefly before he continued. After outlining several ongoing development projects, he advanced to a slide labeled Family Residence Reassessment. My heart sank as a stunning photograph of Grandma's mansion filled the screen. "As you all know, this property has been in our family for 4 generations," he began. "While it holds sentimental value, it's sitting on 5 acres of prime real estate, currently valued at approximately $45 million. Aunt Catherine, elegant in her designer suit, raised a manicured hand. "Richard, before you continue, we should acknowledge that some family members might be emotionally attached to the old house." She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eliza, dear, I know you lived here for a time, and we respect that, but surely you understand sentimentality can't stand in the way of sound financial decisions." Before I could respond, Blake jumped in. "Speaking of sound financial decisions, has anyone seen my new SL Roadster outside? Just picked it up yesterday. Limited edition, only 20 in North America." The blatant topic shift was designed to underscore the gap between my perceived status and theirs. "Very nice," Richard nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of statement piece that reinforces our family's position." He resumed his presentation, outlining a plan to sell the mansion, divide the proceeds among shareholders based on their holdings, and develop luxury condominiums on the site. The developers in the back began distributing glossy brochures featuring renderings of glass and steel towers, utterly unlike the warm brick home that had sheltered our family for generations. "The projected return on investment is substantial," Richard concluded triumphantly. "Any questions before we move to preliminary voting?" I raised my hand. Richard acknowledged me with thinly veiled impatience. "I think we should consider Grandma Elizabeth's wishes," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "She specifically wanted this house preserved as our family's gathering place, a historical anchor. She told me many times that not everything should be measured by its return on investment." Richard's smile tightened. "While Elizabeth had admirable qualities, the market has changed since her time. What made sense then doesn't necessarily make sense now." Aunt Catherine tittered. "Besides, Eliza, with your limited experience in high-value real estate, perhaps this isn't an area where your input carries much weight." I pressed on. "I've analyzed the property values and neighborhood trends. This location's historic value actually increases its worth as a preserved property, rather than being demolished for another luxury development that might sit half-empty, like the Westbrook project did last year." The room fell silent for a moment before Brad let out a dismissive laugh. "Analysis? What would you know about real estate? You can't even afford a house of your own. Still renting that little apartment downtown, aren't you?" Several cousins snickered, and heat rose to my cheeks. "My housing choices are deliberate, not limitations," I replied calmly, but Brad talked over me. "Sure they are. Just like my choice to drive a $150,000 car instead of a 10-year-old Toyota is deliberate. Some of us can afford our choices, cousin." Others just pretend their limitations are choices. Richard cleared his throat, not to defend me, but to steer the discussion forward. Let's take a preliminary vote on selling and redeveloping. We can address specifics after lunch. The vote went exactly as Jessica had predicted, overwhelmingly in favor of selling, with only Jessica and me opposed. As we broke for lunch, a crushing weight of disappointment settled over me. It wasn't just about losing the house. It was the stark realization that my family saw me as nothing more than the poor relation, someone whose opinion held no value because my bank account didn't impress them. Jessica found me in the garden during lunch, sitting on the stone bench where Grandma used to share stories of our family's history. "I'm sorry," she said, sitting beside me. "They can be such snobs." I nodded, fighting back tears. "It's not about the money. They've never asked what I do with my life or why I make the choices I make. They just assume I'm struggling and failing." Jessica squeezed my hand. "For what it's worth, I've always admired how you've charted your own path. There's something noble about not needing to show off." Her words offered some comfort, but the morning's confrontation had left a deeper wound than I'd expected. All these years, I'd told myself their opinions didn't matter, that I was building something meaningful regardless of their approval. Yet their casual cruelty still stung in ways I hadn't anticipated. As we walked back to the house, Jessica lowered her voice. "Tomorrow's session will be tougher. Everyone has to present their personal financial highlights, and Richard structures it to emphasize who's contributing most to family prestige." I nodded, already dreading it. "Thanks for the heads up." That evening at dinner, the conversation revolved around which luxury amenities should be included in the condos that would replace our family home. As they debated infinity pools versus private rooftop gardens, marble versus imported limestone, I realized how fundamentally our values diverged. While I sat silently, grappling with the growing divide, I wondered if there could ever be a bridge between us, or if I even wanted one anymore. Sunday morning's session focused on inheritance matters and property holdings, the core of our annual conference. The drawing room had been rearranged overnight, with a long mahogany table replacing yesterday's casual seating. Uncle Richard took his place at the head, leather portfolios at each setting. Mine, I noticed, was noticeably thinner than the others. "Today, we'll review our individual and collective holdings," Richard announced. "As you know, our voting structure is weighted by contribution to overall assets. I've prepared an updated assessment." His assistant distributed spreadsheets detailing each family member's declared assets and voting power. As expected, Richard controlled 38% of the votes, with his children and siblings holding most of the rest. My own share was a mere 2%, reflecting only the small inheritance I'd publicly acknowledged and my modest salary as a financial consultant, my deliberately vague job title. Before individual presentations, Richard continued, "I'd like to propose adjustments to the distribution framework in Elizabeth's will." This caught my attention. Grandma's will included protections to prevent any single member from gaining too much control. Richard now suggested streamlining these 4 administrative efficiency changes that would consolidate power with the wealthiest members, particularly himself. As others nodded, I mentally cataloged each modification for discussion with Mr. Winters. Brad went first, boasting about his new vice president role at Richard's company, his hefty bonuses, and his luxury investments, including a vacation home in Aspen. For bedrooms, ski-in, ski-out access, and a hot tub overlooking the mountains, he concluded smugly. Blake followed, touting his tech startup investments and an upgraded yacht because the last one wasn't big enough for proper entertaining. Victoria detailed her art collection and her children's private school acceptances secured through the Bennett name. One by one, my relatives showcased their wealth, each presentation met with nods and follow-up questions. The conversation eventually turned to the luxury apartment complex where several family members lived, the one I secretly owned. "The amenities are top-notch," Victoria commented, "but the management has made changes I don't care for. They're renovating the lobby, disrupting everyone with noise." Blake nodded. And they raised the rent last quarter. Not much, but on principle, who do they think they are? Brad leaned forward. What's strange is no one knows who owns the building now. It was bought by some holding company last year. Very mysterious. Richard tapped his pen thoughtfully. Perhaps we should leverage family connections to find out who's behind it. If it's an investment group, they might be persuaded to sell. The location's prime, and control would benefit those of you living there. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart raced at their casual discussion of pressuring me, the mystery owner, into selling. We could apply pressure through the right channels, Richard added. I know people at the city planning office who could make their renovations challenging. Their willingness to use influence to bully a property owner made my blood boil, but I stayed silent. When my turn came late in the afternoon, I presented a deliberately understated summary of my consulting work and modest investments. Brad checked his phone, Victoria whispered to her husband, and Richard tapped his pen impatiently. No one asked follow-up questions. Aunt Catherine seized a pause to ask, Dear, have you considered a career change? Surely there's something more substantial you could pursue with the Bennett name. Brad smirked. Maybe she just needs to marry well. That's still a valid strategy, right? The room erupted in laughter. I felt my cheeks burn but kept my composure. I'm satisfied with my path, I said evenly. Not everyone measures success the same way. Richard cleared his throat. Speaking of different metrics, we should discuss a provision for family members who need support. He didn't look at me, but everyone knew who he meant. The Bennetts take care of our own. Perhaps we should formalize a structure for those less fortunate. The humiliation of being treated as a charity case was almost unbearable. I sat rigidly, hands clasped under the table, as they debated helping me without asking what I needed. That evening, I escaped to my room and called Mr. Winters. They're planning to change Grandma's will provisions, I explained, detailing the modifications. And they're investigating the ownership of Victoria's building. He chuckled. Your ownership is secure, protected by multiple corporate layers. Don't worry. I sighed, gazing out at the moonlit garden. It's not just about my investment. They're selling Grandma's house, the heart of her legacy, and using connections to bend rules. It's everything she despised. Elizabeth would be proud of how you've honored her values, Mr. Winters said gently. What do you want to do? I watched a cloud drift over the moon. It's time to prepare my full portfolio documentation. Can you courier the complete ownership records, including the apartment complex? He paused. Once you reveal your holdings, there's no going back. I'm sure, I replied, determination replacing hurt. They've underestimated me for the last time. Tomorrow, I'll show them who they've been dismissing. Monday morning dawned with a sense of foreboding. Today, each family member would present detailed financial statements, a session designed to highlight the gap between their wealth and my supposed modesty. I dressed carefully in a simple but elegant black dress, purchased on sale at Nordstrom, paired with my mother's pearl earrings. The family had gathered in the library, the antique table laden with laptops and embossed portfolios. Richard began by emphasizing family standards and introduced a new comparison chart showing net worth growth over 5 years. His bar towered in navy blue, followed by his children and siblings. My contribution was a barely visible sliver. As you can see, he said, smiling thinly at me, some have embraced the Bennett legacy more successfully than others. Brad nudged Victoria, both smirking. Richard detailed his commercial real estate empire, followed by Brad's compensation package, Victoria's husband's hedge fund, and Blake's tech investments. Each received thoughtful questions and praise. When my turn came, the room's energy deflated. Phones came out and side conversations began. I started my usual modest summary, but Aunt Catherine interrupted. Eliza, dear, it's painful watching you live below your potential. The Bennett name should count for something, yet you seem determined to struggle. The room fell silent. I kept my expression neutral. I wouldn't call my life struggling, Aunt Catherine. I'm comfortable with my choices. Brad snorted. Comfortable in that tiny apartment with secondhand furniture and a 10-year-old car? Let's be honest, you're the poor relation. Laughter rippled through the room. Some of us are building the family legacy, Brad continued. Others are coasting on grandma's minimum. The cruelty hit hard, but Richard moved on. Perhaps now's a good time to discuss the family assistance program. Eliza, there's no shame in accepting help. The suggestion that I needed their charity when I was worth more than many of them combined was the final straw. That won't be necessary, Uncle Richard, I said evenly, gathering my notes. If my presentation is concluded, I'll step out for air before lunch. As the library door closed behind me, I rushed to my room, hands trembling with rage and hurt. Alone, I let tears fall, not from financial insecurity, but from the pain of being unseen by my family, reduced to a narrative they never questioned. I moved to the window seat where Grandma and I used to sit, gazing at her garden. What would you do now? I whispered. In the quiet, surrounded by her memory, my resolve hardened. This mansion, this legacy, was as much mine as theirs, and I'd honored it in ways they couldn't fathom. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Martha entered, her expression concerned. Miss Eliza, I brought tea. I noticed you left the meeting quickly. Her kindness brought fresh tears. I accepted the cup. They still see me as that orphan teenager who needed charity. No matter what I do, I'm the poor relation. Martha sat beside me, smoothing her apron. Your grandmother used to say wealth makes some people's vision poor. They only see what shines brightest, not what holds true value. Miss Elizabeth would be proud of how you've honored her teachings. She always said you were the one who understood the Bennett legacy. Her words, from someone who knew Grandma intimately, offered profound comfort. Thank you, Martha. That means more than you know. She patted my hand. The package you expected arrived. I placed it on your desk. My heart leaped. Mr. Winters had sent the documentation. After Martha left, I opened the courier package, spreading the contents across my bed: property deeds, corporate structures, portfolio valuations, and proof of my ownership of the apartment complex. Tracing the title deed seal, I felt vindication tinged with sadness. I'd planned to reveal my success tomorrow, but after today's humiliation, I questioned whether I wanted these people in my life. Did I need the validation of family who showed only condescension? Memories flooded back, Grandma teaching me financial statements at this desk, explaining that true wealth created security, not status. The Bennett name used to mean integrity, foresight, and responsible privilege, she'd said. Looking at the evidence of how I'd followed her guidance, I decided I wouldn't reveal my success for their approval. I'd do it to honor Grandma's legacy and prove I was no footnote in the Bennett story. I was its future. The afternoon session shifted to tenant relations in the apartment complex I owned. The irony was palpable as I listened to my family complain about decisions I'd approved. The new security system is so disruptive, Victoria whined, tossing her hair. Contractors start at 9 a.m. 9. As if anyone should hear construction noise during breakfast. Blake nodded. And this guest registration policy is absurd. I had to register my housekeeper as a recurring visitor. Do they not know who we are? Richard leaned forward, steepling his fingers. This is why family control of properties is essential. New management doesn't understand prestigious tenants' needs. I bit my tongue, knowing the security upgrades followed a break-in below Victoria's unit, and the guest policy addressed complaints about unauthorized access. My improvements had boosted the building's value by 12%, though they saw only inconvenience. I've had Jenkins look into the ownership, Richard continued. It was purchased by Horizon Holdings, owned by Summit Investments, controlled by an offshore entity, deliberately obscure. They might be vulnerable to pressure. His calculated plan to bully me made something snap, but I stayed calm. What kind of pressure? I asked innocently. Richard smiled, missing the edge in my voice. Approvals can be expedited or delayed, depending on relationships with officials. With 5 Bennetts as tenants, we represent premium units. A coordinated approach could make ownership uncomfortable. Brad chuckled. If we found code violations or tax issues, our friends at the assessor's office might audit their properties. I watched in disbelief as they discussed harassing me, a textbook example of the entitlement Grandma criticized. And Eliza, Brad added, smirking, this is how real estate works in the real world. Not that you'd understand. Still renting that tiny apartment, right? Laughter broke out. It wasn't just the mockery that infuriated me, it was their corruption, cloaked as legacy. Richard transitioned smoothly. Speaking of real estate, let's finalize the mansion sale. The developer's offer is excellent, and the returns from condos will benefit all shareholders. I raised my hand. Before we vote, I'd propose an alternative. This house has historical value beyond real estate. What if we converted it into a Bennett Family Foundation headquarters, preserving the architecture while honoring Grandma's legacy of community investment? Richard's expression dismissed the idea before I finished. While creative, the financial return would be minimal. We must be practical. Aunt Catherine nodded. A foundation requires management. Some of us, she glanced at me, might have time, but those growing the family fortune have priorities. The vote was a formality. Richard's 40% and his allies' 45% overwhelmed my 2% and Jessica's 5%. As Richard outlined the demolition timeline, a calm settled over me. This wasn't just about a house. It was about the family's soul, abandoned for status. That evening, I called Mr. Winters. They voted to sell the mansion, I said, gazing at Grandma's garden. And they're planning to pressure the apartment complex owner. He chuckled. They have no idea who they're dealing with. Are you revealing yourself tomorrow? I watched the sunset paint Grandma's roses gold. Yes, but I need something else. Can you prepare documents transferring my ownership of Bennett Capital Holdings to a new entity, allowing me to buy the mansion before they sell? After a pause, he replied, Elizabeth always said you understood legacy. I'll have everything ready. What's the new entity's name? I smiled, recalling Grandma's quote about wealth as a tool. Call it Elizabeth's Legacy Trust. I spent hours reviewing my holdings, preparing for the revelation that would reshape my family ties. The hurt had crystallized into clarity about who I was and what I stood for. Their acceptance no longer mattered. I was a Bennett in the truest sense, and tomorrow they'd see it. That night, I spread my portfolio across my bed, deeds, structures, statements showing a $73 million net worth, more than Brad, Blake, and Victoria combined. I organized them into a leather portfolio matching my cousins, a subtle nod to their status obsession. This was my first spend on appearance, but tomorrow demanded a statement. Memories of Grandma teaching me patient wealth building filled my mind. The problem with showing off, Eliza, she'd said, is you're always spending instead of growing. True wealth is security and opportunity. She taught me to analyze neighborhoods, targeting overlooked areas poised for growth. My first purchase, a duplex in a transitional neighborhood, yielded nearly double my investment, fueling further acquisitions. The apartment complex, my biggest gamble, had paid off, its value soaring with my upgrades. I pulled out the investment journal Grandma gave me at 18, its pages chronicling my journey from a $500 mutual fund to sophisticated investments, guided by her notes. Excellent analysis, Eliza. Consider the 10-year potential. My phone chimed with Mr. Winters' message, all documents prepared. Elizabeth's Legacy Trust established. Ready to proceed. I texted my thanks, arranging the portfolio for impact. This wasn't just about wealth, it was about honoring Grandma's stewardship. A knock startled me. Jessica stood in the hallway, concerned. You were quiet at dinner. You okay? I hesitated, then let her in, gathering my documents. Her eyes widened at the property deeds. Eliza, what is this? She picked up the apartment complex ownership folder, her jaw dropping. You're the mysterious owner they've been complaining about? I nodded, relief flooding me. Please don't tell them. I'm revealing everything tomorrow. Jessica sank onto the window seat, shaking her head. All these years, they've treated you like the struggling cousin, and you've been a secret millionaire? I smiled. I followed Grandma's advice, patient investing, living below my means. The less they noticed, the freer I was. She laughed. Brad will have a heart attack. He said tonight someone should teach you real estate so you could afford a decent car. Her expression sobered. Are you sure? Once they know, everything changes. They'll resent you or become your best friends, neither's great. I joined her, gazing at the moonlit garden. I don't need their approval, but I need to honor Grandma's real legacy, not Richard's distortion. I shared my plan to buy the mansion through Elizabeth's Legacy Trust. Jessica squeezed my hand. She'd be so proud. I'll be beside you tomorrow. After she left, I laid out my outfit, a tailored charcoal suit, quietly elegant, paired with Grandma's pearl necklace, symbolizing her understated strength. As I prepared for bed, I felt calm. The insecure orphan was gone, replaced by a woman who'd built something substantial, honoring true Bennett values. Watch me tomorrow, Grandma, I whispered to the moonlit room. I think you'll be proud. Tuesday morning dawned with crystalline clarity, fitting for the reckoning ahead. I dressed in my charcoal suit, fastening Grandma's pearl necklace and my mother's pearl studs. A touch of red lipstick served as war paint. I saw not the poor relation, but a woman of substance. I arrived at the conference room early, placing my portfolio at my seat, then stepped out to center myself. At 9 a.m., the family assembled, Richard at the head, his inner circle nearby, lesser members arranged by perceived importance. Jessica gave a subtle nod of encouragement. Good, we're all here, Richard began, ignoring my arrival. Today, we'll finalize the mansion sale and discuss the apartment complex. His assistant distributed developer contracts. Westbrook Development Group offered $48 million, with construction starting next month. Their legal team prepared shareholder agreements for signing today. As folders circulated, I watched their excited murmurs. Richard would gain $18 million, my 2% share, less than $1 million. Regarding the apartment complex, Richard continued, Jenkins identified leverage points with the owner. We've drafted a letter suggesting code compliance reviews unless they're open to an offer. His casual legal harassment plan fueled my resolve. Before we proceed, I said, my voice strong, I'd like the floor for a presentation. Richard checked his watch. We have a tight schedule, Eliza. The developers expect agreements by noon. This won't take long, I replied, standing and moving to the front without permission. My assertiveness sparked surprised glances. I opened my portfolio, removing my holdings valuation. For years, I've listened to assumptions about my finances, I began, meeting each family member's eyes. I've endured whispers about the poor relation, the condescension, the pity, the mockery. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Victoria studied her manicure. Yesterday, Uncle Richard showed a graph of our wealth contributions. It's time to update it. I handed the valuation to Richard's assistant for projection. As my $73 million net worth appeared, silence engulfed the room. This can't be right, Brad sputtered, flushing. No mistake, I said coolly. While you bought sports cars and vacation homes, I built a portfolio outperforming most of yours combined. I distributed my financial statements, savoring their shock. But you live in that small apartment, Aunt Catherine protested. You drive that old Toyota. By choice, not necessity, I replied. Grandma taught me displaying wealth and building it are opposing goals. I chose the latter. Richard, gray-faced, scrutinized my documents. How did you manage this without family connections? His bewilderment nearly made me laugh. I used Grandma's principles, patient investing, undervalued properties with growth potential, principles this family abandoned for flashy developments. I removed the apartment complex ownership document, placing it before Victoria. Regarding the mysterious owner, you plan to pressure, You're all my tenants." Chaos erupted. Blake knocked over his glass, Brad sputtered denials, and Victoria stared at the document. Richard's voice sharpened. "Impossible. You couldn't have acquired that building over $20 million. $28 million, I corrected, legally, ethically, through 10 years of careful growth." I addressed my cousins. "Victoria, the construction noise you complained about was for security upgrades after a break-in. Blake, the guest policy followed unauthorized access incidents." Their shock was almost comical. Richard flipped through my statements. "This doesn't change the mansion sale. Agreements are based on shareholding percentages." I placed the Elizabeth's Legacy Trust papers on the table. As of 9 a.m., I transferred my holdings to Elizabeth's Legacy Trust, which purchased Jenkins Development Company, owning 30% of Bennett family holdings through proxy purchases. Richard's face drained of color. "That's not possible. You were so convinced of my insignificance. No one noticed what I was doing," I said quietly. "With my consolidated shares, I control 35% of Bennett Holdings, enough to block any decision, including the mansion sale." Silence followed. Jessica clapped slowly. "Well played, cousin. Grandma would be proud." Brad pushed back. "This is a trick. You can't take control after contributing nothing." "I haven't taken control," I replied. "I've prevented dismantling Grandma's legacy by those who've forgotten its meaning." I returned to my seat. The mansion sale is off. As for the apartment complex, I won't evict family, but I'll review rent discounts some of you receive. Victoria flushed. Richard, recalibrating, suggested collaboration. Wise, I agreed. Starting with Grandma's vision of stewardship, not status. As I met their stunned gazes, I felt quiet satisfaction. For the first time, they truly saw me. In the days following, family dynamics shifted dramatically. Richard invited me to his club, admitting he'd underestimated me. "Perhaps we've confused wealth's substance with its symbols," he said, echoing Grandma. His collaboration proposals revealed he still missed my values. I listened but made no commitments, insisting on responsible stewardship. Aunt Catherine invited me to tea, suddenly interested in my philanthropy after years of dismissal. Brad pitched a project, transparently seeking my capital. I declined, suggesting he revisit Grandma's principles. Jessica remained my ally, joking over coffee about the family adapting to the new apex predator. I nurtured genuine relationships, offering second chances to those showing remorse, keeping others at a polite distance. I established the mansion as the Elizabeth Bennett Foundation headquarters, dedicated to affordable housing and financial education, preserving it against Richard's plans. I kept my apartment and Toyota by choice, valuing freedom from expectations. 6 months later, Martha approached me at a foundation event. "Your grandmother visits my dreams," she confided. "Last night, she glowed with pride, saying you understood that wealth is for security and good, not showing off. She said you inherited the Bennett spirit, not the name or money, but its heart." Her words meant more than newfound respect from my family. The hurt of their condescension lingered, but I grew comfortable as Grandma's legacy guardian, balancing forgiveness and boundaries. The greatest lesson wasn't about money, it was authenticity. For years, I'd let my family misperceive me, partly for strategy, partly for approval. The freedom of being seen, regardless of their liking, was more valuable than my portfolio. Success without integrity is hollow, wealth without purpose, a burden, family without respect, not worth keeping. Today, in Grandma's preserved rose garden, I feel peace beyond that revelation day. The mansion now hosts financial literacy programs for youth like my mother, the teacher who valued work over wealth. I still drive my Toyota to foundation meetings where Richard arrives in his Bentley. But now he knows it's my choice, not limitation. My true wealth lies not in properties, but in living authentically, honoring values beyond status, using privilege for impact. What about you? Have you been underestimated only to prove others wrong? Or are you building something others don't yet see? Share your stories in the comments. If this journey of quiet determination resonated, hit like and subscribe for more stories of finding strength and authenticity. Thank you for joining me. Remember, sometimes the most powerful move isn't displaying your advantages, but waiting for the perfect moment to reveal them.